Hello, my name is Matthew, and I read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I finished it a few days ago, and actually I've spent some time collecting my thoughts and really trying to pin down how I feel about this novel. I also just watched the most recent movies starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tobey Maguire, which did inform some of my opinion of this while I was thinking about this great but conflicted book. Um, it's beautifully written. It has some of the most beautiful, lyrical, poetic passages that you can read in a 20th century novel. But it's full of the most awful people. These characters are all miserable, awfully behaved, decadent, depraved, um, irresponsible, careless, and told so beautifully. So as I'm reading it, I'm thinking, well, I hate nearly all of these characters. And at the beginning, and the more I got to know them, the more we see how they behave, it just gets more depressing. Now, I do believe that this has one of the best opening passages of a novel and one of the best ending passages, and I'd like to read both of them. Chapter 1. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. And so, a novel where it's so easy to criticize these characters, the opening passage is warning us, don't be so quick to judge. It's beautiful. The ending passage, the last passage of the novel. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther, and one fine morning, so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past, which encapsulates another major theme that runs through this tragic novel. This is a novel that the book itself, but also many of the characters, are looking into the past and also looking into the future. And we have Gatsby, who wants to relive the past and create a new future. He has that just unbelievable hope and unrealistic optimism, which is such a strong part of his character. He encapsulates this idea of the American dream where you can make your own future if you're determined enough. When I think about the idea of the past and the future, I can't help but recognize how incredibly old-fashioned the structure of this story is. It really does feel like an ancient Greek tragedy where the plot, the climax, the plot leading up to the climax of the novel is just this tightly wound bear trap where everything is like a puzzle box. All the defining characteristics of the characters, the motivations, the plot points, specific details that are put into place all leading up to this perfectly tragic bit of circumstance. It just snaps together. And it does feel like a dramatic stage play. It also, this rather short novel, feels so cinematic. It is moving and it's swift, and we're just zooming, like all the cars that are recklessly zooming. And seeing this as a movie, the movie had some questionable choices, especially the soundtrack and the music, but the scenes which felt so accurate, parts of the movie that felt like they were true to the spirit of the novel, really showed off how the moving pictures of the time and Fitzgerald's interest and affinity into the cinema, of course, with his later writings, the Pat Hobby stories, and actually being in Hollywood. But it's very much apparent here how how cinematic his style of writing really was. And so that bear trap of a climax. We have all of our principal characters. We have Nick Carraway, our narrator, one of the many characters that has an aspect of being on the outside looking in, is the neighbor to the great Jay Gatsby, who for a whole summer is throwing the party of the century several days a week, every single week for a whole summer. All of New York City is driving into Long Island uninvited to the bash of the century, and we get descriptions of the most decadent, opulent, over the top party, barrels and barrels of liquors, and barrels and barrels of wedges of limes and lemons, and an extravaganza. That's Jay Gatsby and his parties that he's been throwing. There's Daisy, of course, married to Tom Buchanan, and then Jordan Baker. We also have Tom, Daisy's husband, who has he has a mistress who is Myrtle, who's the wife of the gas station owner. These are our major players. We find out the reason that Gatsby is throwing these parties is because 5 years before he fell in love with Daisy, he bought a house directly across the bay, the body of water, from where the Buchanan's household is. And it has that marvelous visual symbol of the green light off of the dock on the pier. Gatsby would look across the water. He's throwing these parties in the hopes that one day Daisy will be one of the hundreds of people that visit his house every weekend. She'll stumble in and they'll fall in love all over again. So Gatsby finds out that Nick Carraway is Daisy's cousin. Jordan also knows Daisy. He wants to create this situation where there's going to be a meeting between Gatsby and Daisy, and they're going to meet and just reverse back time. She's going to leave Tom, and they're going to be in love, and it's going to be like those 5 years never happened. The recklessness that runs throughout, as soon as we see these characters drinking obscene amounts and just being decadent and depraved, and to Tom and Nick's first night when they go into New York City, and they're with Tom's mistress, and he's also Tom's even being friendly with and interacting with face to face with the garage store owner, who he's sleeping with his wife. And there are all these hints, not hints, they're all, we have these moments where all these drunken people are driving around, and we get uh, scenes of car accidents throughout. A wheel falling off, Gatsby zooming around the city, showing off his business card to the policeman. They see the name and then let him go straight away because it's the Great Gatsby. And there's a passage in here which I bookmarked. I think it describes a lot of the novel, and also does some foreshadowing. And I believe this is Jordan driving with Nick. "You're a rotten driver," I protested. "Either you ought to be more careful, or you oughtn't to drive at all." "I am careful." "No, you're not." "Well, other people are," she said lightly. What's that got to do with it?" "They'll keep out of my way," she insisted. "It takes two to make an accident." "Suppose you met somebody just as careless as yourself." "I hope I never will," she answered. "I hate careless people. That's why I like you." This idea of living a luxurious lifestyle, and that you can be careless, reckless, do whatever you want, there's no consequences, everything will always be sorted out because you're some part of high society. The cynicism and self-centeredness in this idea that really the whole world does revolve around your special conception of life. I just think that's such a profound passage. "Suppose you met somebody just as careless as yourself." "I hope I never will," she answered. "I hate careless people." It's such a hypocrisy. All of these events, especially when we get the big face-to-face moment with Tom and Jay, everything gets laid out on the table. We have that zooming scene where they go into the city. They switched cars. They stopped at the gas station on their way. Tom realizes that the gas station owner knows that his wife has been sleeping with somebody, so they're going to be leaving. Tom knows that Jay's trying to take away his wife, so he sees the two women in his life being pulled apart in opposite directions. They get into New York City. It's just this calamitous confrontation. They switch cars again, and Gatsby and Daisy go off together. And then Tom, Jordan, and Nick follow behind them. We have the moment of the car accident, where all of these pieces have been put into perfect place. The Myrtle, the mistress of the gas station owner, sees the car that she believes earlier in the day Tom was driving. She runs out. The car hits Myrtle and kills her. They're all drinking and driving. Tom pulls up in his own car now with Nick Carraway and Jordan. The gas station owner realizes that he was the person that was in the car that had hit his wife Myrtle, and all this stuff just fits in perfectly. And then we get the reveal that it was actually Daisy driving. It's hard to believe that if they were sitting in opposite seats, that it would have gone either way. Um, they're all horrible drivers, uh, being as reckless as you could possibly be. But all of this piles on, and it ends in tragedy. Um, Gatsby dies, um, becomes this infamous figure. Gatsby really is one of the most amazing characters. He does feel larger than life. His ambitions are larger than life. His tragedy was larger than life. Uh, the way that he spoke, old sport, uh, which sounds so characteristic of the time, except that even the characters, Tom in particular, um, points out that it's an affectation. Where did you even get that from anyway? Old sport. And at the end of the novel, I am so impressed with how there's so many different things going on and how beautifully told it is and how precise the plotting and structure, um, how carefully it was all laid out to just create this one tragic hurricane of a situation. And there's this constant feeling of being on the outside, looking in. We see that from Nick's perspective. Gatsby, of course, seeing that green light. Also, the mysteriousness behind Gatsby's surreal, incredible wealth. The conception of the amount of money that he was spending on these parties is just ludicrous to think about. But Tom is a part of old money. He lives in wealth. Gatsby has money, but he's not part of that society. So there's a dual conflicts of him on the outside looking in. As a reader, maybe not so much now, but for the longest time, that part of the American dream is this idea that when you make it, all your problems can go away, or they can be lessened, and you can finally live the life that you're going to live, and you're going to be happy. And we get this inside look into either extremely upper middle class, all the way up to the most fabulously wealthy, and they're all miserable. There's nothing different. Their motivations, their behavior, the instant gratification that they're all looking for and finding, just shows that it's all very, it's all human nature. whether or not you have lots and lots of money, if you're living the American dream, doing all the things right to succeed and get ahead in life, you read this novel and just see a gallery of characters that are all deeply flawed, troubled, and unhappy. So it is beautiful and impressive. It's not one of my favorite novels. I just can't stand any of these characters. So those are some of my thoughts on The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Let me know if you've read it. Let me know what you think about anything that I had to say. And thank you for watching. please leave a comment if you would like, and take care.